Yo, what are you doing right now? We are going to get real about men's issues, who Jesus is, and who we are as men in Christ. We're going to hear Trey, Jeremy, Michael, and Brad break it down. These guys call themselves the Cussin Christians. All right, guys, what is going on?
Do you know about that, Trey?
I had no clue about Fabio.
A picture somewhere.
That's the vision for Trey, is his hair flowing in the wind.
Well, you cut yours off, dude.
Yeah, I just cut mine 2 weeks ago. It was like shoulder length, but it wasn't working.
It was?
Yeah.
I talked to someone that was disappointed in your haircut.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
She's the one. The girl that cuts my hair said, I love that guy with the long hair that plays left-handed guitar. And I said, that hair ain't long anymore.
Yeah.
And
Back to the Viking look.
And she was disappointed.
It works.
She goes, I was disappointed. He looked really cool. Yeah. I said, well, he's still cool.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. So, but
I didn't know we were going to talk about hair that much.
Well, man, we ramble for a few minutes always, and
we have a guest with some hair. Then that's where we go.
We have a guest with hair today. But no, Francie, thanks for being here, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prayers for Michael Thomas, who's serving in West Virginia with his company, Disaster Relief. It's kind of a tough go up there. He did run into somebody in West Virginia yesterday that said, aren't you on the Cussin Christians?
Wow.
Yes.
How cool is that?
Yes. Wow. It's someone that works for his company. I guess word got out, and they started talking about Jesus yesterday. So it was, hey,
wow. Cool.
We reached one person.
Yeah, man. It's been worth it.
One listener.
We got one listener.
4 years has been worth it.
Yes.
162 episodes.
Yeah.
One person.
Hopefully after that conversation, he didn't go unfollow.
No.
Right.
Hope not.
Yeah.
Hope not as well. But if you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate it, or listening to us on your favorite audio channel. Thanks for joining us. There's so many cool things happening with our ministry right now, because we've been filming our grace testimonies for the Matthew West event on May 31st. And Brad's about to get busy in his laboratory. Mm-hmm. What's it like when you're editing and cutting things? Do you sometimes just laugh?
Yes. Well, it's funny because now I edit things in real time. So when Michael and Jeremy are here and they're talking, I'm like, I'm cutting that out. I'm like, you're taking too long. Like I'm already doing it in my head. So it's funny.
You're like, Trey, get to the point.
Get to the point, Trey.
You've done too much of a setup. Just
it's like you might as well stop talking. I'm going to cut this out anyways.
I know.
I'm going to do a hand signal for
I was gonna say,
you're cut? Yeah. You're done.
You're done.
Just move on. It's fun.
I would love to sit and look over your shoulder while you're doing it and see your facial expressions, and I can see you going, that one ain't going to work.
A lot of disgust. A lot of just shaking my head.
I know.
Kids.
I know.
Yeah.
But
it's fun.
But and Sheffy had a work call, so we've got the three stooges here with our beautiful friend Stacie Tchvidjian. Thank you for coming and joining us. We're going to be getting you in the hot seat here in a little while for the video for the Matthew West event that we're working. I'm so glad you drove up to join us.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me and just including me.
Well, we had the honor of having you break some bread at our house last night and catching up. And Tullian, we know all your secrets. Not that you have any, right? But
he put them out there a long time ago.
He kind of wrote a book. But anyway, I learned about what he likes to eat and what he doesn't, and how picky he is, and all that. We're so glad you're here. Your church in Jupiter with you and your husband, the Sanctuary. I visited a few times. Just love the vibe. I love the redemption, recovery, come as you are way that you guys handle things. I know you guys came and joined us for a men's conference a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Always left a mark. And as we were getting our thoughts together for the Matthew West event, which is our 6th event that we're doing, I saw a testimony you gave to your church, and a friend of mine called and said, you got to get Stacie on this thing. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just thankful that you're here to just talk about Stacie and life, and how Jesus has impacted you and the power of God's grace in your life. And we are thrilled to death you're joining us for this project, and to share a little bit of your story. Our ministry's tagline is discovering grace one man at a time. I discovered grace through a suicidal experience. and I'm obviously here telling you about it now. So it worked out fine. It wasn't always smooth, but it worked out. I love hearing stories of the revelation of grace on our lives. All of us have come from different backgrounds in the church, and we all bring something different to the party. We may not always agree, but we're going to grow a little bit more today because of you, and I'm glad you're here. So what led me to call you was a sermon you did 6 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, about the woman at the well. And I wanted to really explore that today on this podcast, because as you're reading John chapter 4 and Jesus going to Samaria, a place probably shouldn't have been walking through anyway.
He avoided, and so did every Jew.
Every Jew avoided.
Every Jew.
Right. And I would love for you to share a little bit. We've all watched it, and pick your brain a little bit about you representing that woman. Talk to me. Growing up in Texas, high school athlete, popular kid on campus. Talk to me about this revelation you've had.
Well, I did grow up in Texas. I'm a 7th generation Texan, so like really Texan. And so my big family is dysfunctional in a lot of ways, relationally especially. Lots of cousins of mine, children, including myself, born out of wedlock. My mom was 15 when she had me. My grandmother was 15 when she had my mom. So there's only 30 years between my grandmother and I. And so we have, I started out with a reputation of my family just being really kind of looked down upon, especially within the church. I grew up in a Baptist church, a loving place. I loved going to church, but I definitely felt, looked down upon, like a second-class Christian, for lack of a better term. And so growing up like that, I really felt the need to be better and like find my way in the church somehow. And I wanted to do better for my family. Like, you guys did something that turned out well. So they didn't really have to push me to be a good student or be an athlete or any of those things in school. And I loved it. But right after graduation, I found out I was pregnant, and which like bashed any dreams that I had of like going to college and doing the things that I wanted to do. And it felt like I messed up everything for everyone in my life. And fast forward from the age of 18 to an adult who's now been married twice, divorced twice. Tullian's my third husband. No one steps into adulthood planning on getting divorced. Like, that's, you don't go, oh, well, I mean, if this doesn't turn out okay, I mean, I'll just get divorced. I mean, that's not the mentality. It's, I'm going to get married. And for me, especially, staying married was like such a huge goal. Even if I didn't want to be in the marriage, just not being divorced was more of an idol. I don't want to be in that category, because my whole family is in that category, and I wanted to avoid it. But I didn't. And in 2005, I divorced my first husband, and we shared one child, my youngest son. And it really felt like I was kind of ostracized in a new way that I had not been to that point, which was now I am that divorced woman, that person that is, that I didn't want to be. And through that, there was just a lot of support from my family, but also, a new label attached to me that was unwelcome. And, it wasn't, when I was growing up, it wasn't popular to be a teenage mom. It wasn't a reality show that you were getting paid for in 1992 when I found out I was pregnant. It was still very taboo. And, I had friends scatter. So, redeeming myself by getting married and going through a marriage and doing all the things I did when I was married the first time felt like a little redemption, but there's always that Samaritan woman just like buried in there that you can't escape. And I know that I didn't realize that until I was well into my mid 30s. I didn't realize how much I related to her until then.
You know, he walked to the well. Obviously, she looks at him. She's so skeptical. She's been burned by the church so much. And, you know, she made bad decisions. She's paid consequences for. So that's life. You know, that is life. And Jesus was trying to tee her up. Like, you know, hey, if you knew the gift of God and who this is that's talking to you right now, and I say, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. I mean, he's trying to tee her up to prompt her to, and she doesn't bite.
No.
So
what I think so interesting about her is that, I mean, it's the obvious things that we learn. She goes at noon by herself, so she's an outcast of the outcast.
Right.
So she doesn't even have girlfriends to go with her. She's not even going at a regular time that any person that's accepted in her own society would go.
Heat of the day.
Yeah. Heat of the day to carry water, which is, you know, in the Old Testament, water is used so often as some sort of judgment. And in the New Testament, it's used over and over again for baptism and for
cleansing.
Absolutely. For cleansing, for renewal, for some newness of life, some resurrection. And so that's what's so beautiful, in part, that Jesus himself, a Jew, you know, I'm an expedient person. I like to take the most efficient route anywhere I go. So it was point A to B, and Jesus didn't take it. He was like, I'm going to stop over here in a place that nobody in my culture stops at all and would not dare to. I'm going to go where the most unclean of the unclean are. And he knew he would meet her specifically. The most unclean of the unclean, the outcast of the outcast. He knew it. And he was going to ask her for a drink. You know, like that's unheard of.
Right.
That would defile him. It would make him unclean.
Just to have the conversation. Much less ask her for a drink, which is like one of the most astounding parts of it, because then we hear him later actually say, you know, I thirst, when he's on the cross. So, I mean, he really was asking a question that he was showing us, like foretelling, like, I'm gonna take the drink that you're gonna give me. I'm gonna take your unclean and I'm gonna drink it. You know, it's crazy that when he sets her up at the beginning and says, you know, do you know even who you're talking to? She fires right back because she's obviously been burned, and she looks at him and goes, you want to drink something? You didn't even bring the tools with you to get a drink. She's skeptical, throwing it back at him, right? How do you relate to that with your life, with the situation you were in, not fully understanding grace yet? You're scared, you're confused, and someone comes to you and talks about Jesus or whatever. Oh yeah, right. Look what's happened to me. And you know, reflecting inside, you're going, okay, I made some mistakes, but at the same time, this grace thing can't be real because of the ostracizing or people turning their backs. Your friend group scatters or whatever. You're going to be skeptical, about it, right?
Sure.
How
You
put yourself there and let me know what you think.
You know, when we know the unlovely parts about ourselves, it's really difficult to think that you are actually loved. When you know that you don't deserve grace, not just from God, but from anybody, you know, your children that you've hurt, your family that you've hurt, friends that you've hurt, even myself, I've hurt myself. So to accept grace is one of the hardest things that we do, because we know ourselves to the degree that we do. We know our unloveliness, those ugly parts of us, and it's hard to think that somebody could actually love this ugly person.
Yeah.
Because, go ahead.
Stacie, you said in the season you felt like a Samaritan woman yourself. How much of that do you think was the public perception looking at you versus how you viewed yourself on the inside?
I think it was like probably half and half, like part and part, just because I knew what I wanted to avoid, you know, what stigmas, what labels, what life choices I wanted to avoid. And it was like, those were the very choices, you know, the law stirs up the trespass without you even knowing sometimes. It's not like a rebellion. It wasn't, you know, I was rebelling outwardly, But I was essentially, that's what I was doing, was actually, the lawsters of the trespass. The very thing I don't want to do, I am doing. It's Paul. It's very...
What do I keep doing? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's...
Conundrum.
That made it very real to me. Like I really don't have control in the ways that I think that I do.
Yeah. I think one of the powerful revelations as a Christian is to identify that what you've done is not who you are.
Right.
It's so easy to paint yourself in a box based on what mistakes you've made versus your newness in Christ, your revelations daily.
Right. And you do, it is inevitable that we're all part unbelievers until we die. We're not fully believing in the love of God for us through Jesus. We just don't fully believe it. We believe it to the degree that God has given us the faith to do that. But where that unbelief is are the places that he meets us most, because that's where the desperation is. That's where the isolation is. That's where the suicidal thoughts are, ideations. That's where, we get into a place where we're at the end of our rope and I reach my limitations and I can't change this thing about myself. And does it matter? Does it actually matter in the big scheme of things where Jesus is concerned? And he says, no, I'll take all of that.
Was your family supportive of you once that happened?
My family, I almost can't talk about them without crying. As dysfunctional as my family is relationally, I have been loved so well by my family. It's unbelievable. I just had a talk with a woman who is non-local to Jupiter, but she's part of our church family. We call it Friends That Are Family. And she said, I'd never heard anybody say that, but I actually think that about my own family. They have their own dysfunction, and, it doesn't matter what your socioeconomic group is or your status. If you've been loved well through some really hard times, you can make it.
Yeah.
You really can make it.
And was your family still involved in church at that point?
Oh, yeah.
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 And how was the reaction from the church?
I think I was so lost in a lot of my pain and just having to, take the next step to do whatever I was having to do daily. I know that the church has historically treated people who are divorced or have children out of wedlock. They don't really know what to do with people like that. Because they don't think that those kind of people should have a voice, ironically.
Yeah.
And, so the people that have done things that are visibly bad are usually treated different. When I became single after I was divorced, church doesn't know what to do with single people either.
Right.
It really doesn't. It was well, we have to get you married. That's the thing we have to do. And we have to protect our spouses from you, the single person, instead of just going, we just need to love you.
Right.
You're also still a daughter of Christ and someone God loves and saved and forgives. And how can we love you best? And so, fortunately, the churches that I was a part of were actually very loving and kind. But I know that that's not the norm.
Right.
Because I hear stories like that every week.
Yeah. And that's so much of a good testimony of how Jesus was with the Samaritan woman. I think we almost expect the church to ostracize and to push people away. But when they don't, it's how much more powerful is that?
Oh, it is the power. That is where the power is.
Yeah.
The church is a tapestry of sinners that are saved.
Right.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's
Not
just a matter of
people
time.
that have figured it all out.
No.
I'm looking at Romans 5:20, and this is so hard to put in practice, especially within the church, where it says, the law was brought in so that the trespass might increase. But where sin increases, grace increases all the more. So that just as sin reigned in death, so also might grace reign through righteousness to bring in eternal life through Christ Jesus our Lord. So how hard is it to increase the grace where it's needed, and not just look at the sin and say, that's ugly, I don't want to see that. It's difficult as believers to show that grace when it's needed.
Well, and in that context of that, when they ask well, then what do we do? Do we keep sinning? And it's that's not the point. You've missed the whole point of it. The entire point. It's no, that's when you push it in deeper and you go, life is grace in practice. It is forcing us to go, do you really believe that? Do you really believe in grace in this instance?
Right.
Which has nothing to do with allowing people to be criminals and allowing them to get away with bad behavior and blah, 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 all of the stuff that the church is known for, behavior modification in one way or another. Grace is the only reason grace exists is because of the deficit. It is unmerited favor. So it is only there for the deficit.
You never deserve it.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
So nobody, it's, like, oh, that person's like full of grace. Are they really? Are they faced with something really ungracious in their life? And like, what does it look like then when they have to accept somebody or are faced with the opportunity to accept someone, forgive someone, love someone, in the face of the unlovely, in the ugly, like the ugly parts of it. And it's rare. It's rare, but that's really where the rubber meets the road, isn't it?
That's the application. Yeah, it's focusing more on the solution than it is the problem.
Yeah, and just believing in
Jesus.
it. Like, do you actually believe it? Because we can say we believe it until you're faced with having to show that you actually believe it.
Yeah, because if we're not careful, we can become fruit inspectors. We're just looking for,
don't even get me started
those fruits
with
have
that.
spots on them. I don't really.
Don't even get me started with the produce section of Christianity, because I mean, it is terrible.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of walk talks with Matt McMillan, and he always jokingly says, like, what are you going to do about all the sinning? Like, we're just so can be so focused on the sinning that we don't focus on the solution.
I had an experience one time where I was talking to a deacon, and I guess one of the staff members was going through a bad time and with his marriage, and the only thing he focused on was, we can't let him get divorced because that's a sin. And it bothered me to hear that. I'm going, wait a minute, let's talk with this guy and just see. Let's get there. We just want to keep him from we want to keep him from making that bad decision. Well, I don't want anybody to get divorced either.
We're not promoting that, but that's not promoting that.
But the focus of grace is something deeper and bigger. And if you look at the definition of grace from Titus 2, grace saved me. And grace trains me. I mean, that's the basic thing from Paul's words. It's training me to walk more upright every day. I'm going to slip, but you know what? I'm going to dust off my britches and get back on the horse and keep going.
And that's part of like the way that I personally, and as I talk to actual people who truly experience grace, it's in the moments where you have some new awareness that you do not deserve it, that you are totally, absolutely unmerited in any way. You are not a holy hall monitor. You do not have a pass. You don't get a pass for the things you've done. And when you realize the level of the law and your inability to keep it to the degree that God has set, not some Christian version of the law where it's a level that you can jump over or achieve. When you realize the law
you break one law, you've broken it all.
No one thinks about that.
The standard is perfection.
I took care of that.
Not good enough.
The most subtle sins are still just as evil as
it started
the
with
worst
somebody
of them.
eating fruit.
Yeah.
Okay. So those things that we think are the big sins, adultery, addiction,
it started with
abuse,
a bite.
It started with a bite, just a rebellion.
Anything that goes against God's will is sin.
Yeah.
That unbelief of like, I'm going to be God myself in this instance. It started with somebody eating fruit. And ironically, now we're trying to point it out in everybody. Yeah. Trying to gauge it. Yeah.
I think we strive so hard to look perfect and to look like we've got it all together and be all buttoned up, because that's what most churches are. But like you said, when you've been on the receiving end of that grace, and what I love about your church is that there's no pretense that, hey, we're all perfect, we're all shiny, and it's like, come as you are, and whatever's going on, we'll help you deal with it, we'll help you get through it. But I think a lot of churches, they don't want divorce associated with their church. They don't want people to hear, oh, so and so this church got divorced, or this guy's going through alcoholism or whatever.
Right.
We just try to sanitize it all.
Yeah. If you have a face tattoo, you can never come to church again, or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Any blemish that's determined as a blemish, they don't know what to do with. It's so funny because our church does get a lot of the misfits. We don't, it's funny, Tellene and I have talked about it a few times. We keep getting people sent to our church from this one guy who's a therapist locally. We've never met the guy. We've heard his name, but we don't know him. And these people that go to him to talk about, their divorce or addiction or some kind of problem, he's a Christian, and he's like, you know what church you should go to? You should go visit the sanctuary. And they have, some recovery groups you could be a part of. And so this guy keeps sending people who have been in other churches, but like they're not, getting anywhere. So he's like, you should go to that church. And we're like, come on, like the doors are open. Welcome.
Grace.
Yeah.
Grace.
And, people were like, I thought there was no judgment in church. And I'm like, hey, there's still people here, and we're judgy. People can be judgy. It's not that we're judgment free. God is judgment free.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You're still going to encounter humans when you come into this church.
Absolutely.
We're jacked up, so.
Broken.
Right.
Broken people
and
break things.
we're like, we know it. So we're not trying to say that we're like, come in here and we're going to be, we're going to do the best we can, but we're still human,
Yep.
At the end of the day. And so are you. And we expect humans to be human.
And how beautiful, like this passage in John chapter 4 about the Samaritans, like it's personal to you, but it's also like, how can easy is it as Christians to still view ourselves as the Jews and other people that are full of sin as Samaritans and create a divide between us because of their uncleanliness or because of their background or how they were raised. Like that can be something that separates us from being able to share grace.
We're both, honestly.
Right.
We're Pharisees about the Pharisees. We're Pharisaical about that. And we're the Samaritan woman.
Yeah.
We're both. And if we can't see that about ourselves, then there's probably
I think we need to have the revelation that
self-awareness.
Paul says there's no Jew nor Gentile, there's no Greek, there's no skin. Like it's all gone. It's all one
The
in
ground is
Christ.
level.
That we're all one.
Right. The
And
ground's
that
level.
we need to get everybody else to be that part of that one.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, we resist that to some degree.
She had the revelation. She had this moment. Now, we have someone else that's going to be joining us for the Matthew West event. He's a pastor, and he had a moral failure. And he told me in his testimony that we're going to be showing on the screen at Matthew West that, for 15 years I talked about grace, but I never knew what it was until I had the moral failure. And he's given the description. I felt like I was in a pit. And people would walk by, and you had your nonchalant people who would walk by and go, oh, that's a shame. Then you'd have your other people that walk by and go, you deserve every bit of it. You have your other people that will walk by kind of like they're looking at a zoo animal, like, oh, man. And then he said, I talked about grace, I preached about grace and all these things for 15 years, but I never knew what it was till I realized I wasn't by myself in that pit. And it was actually his wife in there with him. And she gave him the grace to forgive, to reconcile, and come back strong. And they've come back stronger than ever. It's an amazing story. She had this revelation when at the well. This is something different. Who was that person in your life that was in the pit with you that helped you connect the dots on the gospel of grace and what it truly means?
I mean, Jesus first and foremost, but humanly speaking, Jesus and skin and bones. It really was for me first, my mom. She was the first person that really, when I found out I was pregnant at 18 years old, and I was terrified to tell my parents that I was pregnant because I was like, I've ruined their lives. I don't know what I'm going to do. Scared to death.
You didn't write a letter to her, did you?
No.
Okay. So sorry, I'm joking with him.
I've got a similar testimony where I grew up in the church. My mom was a church organist. Dad was a deacon and elder, and I was a pretty clean-cut kid. I didn't party in high school or any of that. I went to a Christian school, went to a Baptist college in Oklahoma, met a girl. She was 18, I was 19. I got her pregnant. And the same type of thing where my family and her family were so, just the way they reacted, and then the grace that they extended in our churches too. The churches that we went to didn't miss a beat. Like they were in there with us, and we've made it. Like we're still together all these years,
I love it.
Which is again God's grace.
That's who was there with you in the pit.
Yeah.
No, I was terrified. One of my friends, actually, he was my ex-boyfriend. I didn't even have a boyfriend at the time. We had dated for over a year. We had broken up several months before I found out I was pregnant for some significant reasons. We were not going to be back together. His best friend told my parents that I was pregnant, and I was sitting in my room, and it was in the evening, and I'm sitting there terrified. My mom walks in, and I'm just like more terrified because, I mean, my mom was like, you know, she wanted me to turn out right. So, I mean, she was like, you know, law-laden in some ways, and I respected that. But she walked in and she stood beside my bed and she said, "Sean called me, and I know that you're pregnant." And I felt like every ounce of blood in life left my body. And in that same instance, she fell like down to the side of my bed and just hugged me and said, "Why didn't you tell me? Who else would understand better than me?" Because she had me when she was 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it was like I remember she slept with me that night. Like she stayed huddled up with me. And just, it's like you said, it was just a flood of grace in a way that honestly, if she and my dad would have had any other reaction in that moment that was less than that, I don't know how I would have made it through the following years that went beyond that, because it was so incredibly foundational for me. It was my first tangible experience of one-way love from God to me in a moment where I knew I was guilty. Like an unseen sin was saw, you know, like it's seen right now. I cannot hide it.
Right.
You can't be a little bit pregnant. You know, you either are or you're not.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, I felt the ugliest and the most unlawful that I'd ever been at that point in my life. And everything I got was just grace from my parents, and was just unbelievable.
Well, and so at a very, very young age, you experienced that type of grace that most people don't. Maybe they don't experience that for another 20 or 30 years.
Exactly.
And I think if I hadn't gone through what I did, maybe if I knew somebody else who was unmarried that got pregnant, one of my classmates, maybe I would have, who knows, maybe I would have judged them.
Right.
But instantly, and this happened, there were girls that would come to my wife, you know, because again, we got married and we finished school and, you know, had our daughter, but there were girls that would come out of the woodwork and would come talk to my wife and say, I might be pregnant. They were considering abortion. And so my wife would talk them through that. And so God really used it in a powerful way.
No, I totally believe that.
That if we hadn't gone through that, then, you know, who knows?
I think one thing that's beautiful about stories like that, especially if they happen at a young age, I mean, Jesus is the wounded healer. And we talked about this jokingly, but it's true. There's, you know, passages in the gospel about the fellowship of the suffering. And the only way that we become wounded healers in service to God, I mean, those are really the only people in service to loving others horizontally. God doesn't need us to do that. He doesn't, everything he needed from us, he already has and has been finished in the person of Jesus. We get to love people. We get to. We don't have to. We get to.
Yeah.
And that's different. I don't have to.
It's like your father, he wants to help you. He can only help you if you come to him. And you're talking about like you sat here with this shame and isolation. You didn't want to tell your parents because as humans, we oftentimes paint the worst possible outcome, that they're going to be angry with you, that the enemy wants you to say, you know what, keep it to yourself because they're going to be disappointed in you.
Right.
You should have shame. And because of that, we sit there without the grace that we could receive because of that. And we do it to this day. I mean,
it's an unacceptance of it. It's there all the time. It's like having the best gift right here in front of you, the cold drink of water you need, the thing that you actually need. It's right there and you can have it anytime. And a lot of times we're like, I'm not taking it. I don't deserve it. It's not for me. But it is, take and drink. This is for you.
And if you knew your mom was going to receive it so well, you probably would have told her day one, but
I would have been relieved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you decided that, this is not going to go well. So I'm just going to, and we do this all the time. We
contemplated
avoid
everything.
something and then we do it. We're like, that went so great. I should have done that right away.
How many times?
Right.
Yeah.
I contemplated everything I believed I never would contemplate.
Right.
Everything.
The imagination runs wild in
Everything.
the worst ways sometimes.
Everything. And like you're saying, from then on, within my own family, because I'm the oldest of 15 first cousins, I have a lot of girls in my family, honestly. Tons of girlfriends from elementary school and high school and just in general. And I've become, inadvertently, it's an unplanned ministry that you end up having. Not formal, not professional ministry, but unplanned ministry that you end up having, that that's the place where God will have you speak into other people's lives about how great he has been for you, how he's met you in your suffering, how much he loves you, how much he forgives you. And when you become that listening ear for other people, sometimes being heard is the most powerful thing there is, because in those moments we just need to vomit. And we just need to be heard, and we need to be heard without judgment. We need to be heard without somebody telling you what you need to do. Not, unless you're soliciting advice, that's rarely heard when it's given, especially in those moments. Well, you should have done this, and you shouldn't have done that. Well, no shit.
You got a time machine?
Yeah,
I can try that over.
Yeah,
I know.
exactly.
And we have to allow ourselves to our pain to be used for God's glory. Like Brad said, who knows if one abortion was saved because of your testimony or your story you're walking through.
Right.
And who knows what that person's life did for the kingdom.
Right.
They could have gone on to do something great because of what your struggle at 18. It's beautiful when you really look at it.
Right. Yeah, we don't know how God will use, he uses the foolish things and foolish people.
Yeah.
And he really does.
I love that analogy. You talked about a tapestry and how we're on the backside of this thing.
Yeah,
We're
it's
seeing
ugly and messy
crazy
and-
colors and all this chaos, and we don't know how any of it makes any sense.
No.
But we get to heaven, we get to see the front
And
side,
see
the
the full
beautiful thing that God's been weaving all along.
Right.
And we get to see. We just have to trust that he knows what he's doing, and
Right.
we're the clay and he's the potter. We
Right.
don't get to tell the potter what to do with the clay.
No. We're not the creator. We're the creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nobody can redeem a story like he can. And life happens to all of us. So it's like at some point we're going to have some embarrassing failure or something.
Absolutely.
And so it's how we deal with that. Do we turn to him? Do we allow him to use that to minister life to other people? I mean, that's a huge, powerful thing that he does. And so I love hearing those stories.
To me, that's the real me too.
Yeah, it's not so much about, oh no, you did this bad thing. It's like, how did God turn that around? How did he use that?
Look what he did with this.
Yes.
And when you come out, I watched your sermon on YouTube, and when I watched that, and I saw the courage it took to give your past, to talk about those dirty things that that the Samaritan things, that other people can also feel the power to come out and say, hey, I need to talk about this. I need healing from this. I need to share what I've gone through so I can be healed.
And that's really what Tallene and I get messages, on social media, emails, literally every week that just say, I don't have anybody in my life I can tell any of this to. I don't have a person even if they are in a church, I can't tell anybody at my church this thing that's happening in my life, in my marriage, with my children, whatever, with my job, with my anything. It is amazing to me every single day and how much people need that and they don't have it, which is sad.
Because it's heavy to carry these things. I mean, Trace heard some men tell him some stuff that's just heavy to hear about, much less to walk through in life.
Right.
But the power of just getting that darkness and shining light onto it and allowing God to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm huge into, I've never had a substance abuse addiction, but I'm huge on the 12 steps of AA, unpacking them in light of the gospel specifically.
Right.
And I lead women's studies to do that at our church, because I think if I would have had those tools as a teenager in my tool belt to cope with life, I might have made some different decisions. But to do that now, and confession being one of those things, to be able to share with somebody that's a trusted ear. I mean, that's part of those 12 steps. And, I'll hold your hair. I tell women all the time, I'll get a bucket or, we can go in the bathroom, but I'll hold you, better out than in.
Right.
I mean, that's what therapists say. And it's really true. I just got to get it out. I just have to tell somebody this so it's not inside me, eating away at me day in and day out. And it's a powerful thing to be that listening ear. It's an honor to be that listening ear to so many people that just need to get it out, just need to vomit.
Our cornerstone mission verse is James 5:16. Confess your sins to one another, and through prayer be healed. And we like to not to add anything to the Bible, but we like to say genuine Christian brotherhood. We're going to come alongside you. And then, of course, Paul talking about bearing each other's burdens in the book of Galatians. I stole something from a friend of ours, and I use it all the time, and I give him credit sometimes. But Nate Larkin, a lot of times he wraps up his talk with, brothers, I'm looking at you now. I want you to tell me who the 6 men are that are going to carry your casket. I gave that question on Monday night at the rescue mission, and afterwards, several guys came up and goes, I don't have 6 guys. And Nate brings it great. And he's an amazing storyteller. He spent the night with us, a few years back, and I just sat there. All I want to do is, like you last night, I just wanted to write down everything you said. But it's amazing how we go into overdrive to solve our own problems. We go into overdrive of people going, well, you've done this, you need to go do that. And this performance-driven society that we're in, closing word of thought to people that are listening, Stacie, how freeing is it when you understand the power of grace and how grace actually changes you? Michael Thomas says it all the time. People say, you got grace, you can do whatever you want. And Michael goes, exactly. I'm going to do what I want because grace changed what I want to do.
Right.
Right.
We love because he first loved us.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
Around the whole topic, your story, just encouragement of, this ain't you buckling down and gearing up, Buttercup. This is something deeper and bigger than you can ever imagine. Any closing thoughts on that?
I mean, it really is. Grace is the thing that reminds us of a freedom we already have in Christ. And we don't know that we really have that until we find ourselves so enslaved to something, whether it's a secret, an addiction, a situation, to actually in that moment go, wait, I'm not a slave to that. Wait, I don't have to live that way. I'm forgiven for that. We conflate the horizontal with the vertical all the time.
Yeah.
We equate how God thinks about us the way people are reacting to us.
Right.
And that's just simply not true. And it's very hard for us to pull those two planes apart. And so living in that freedom feels like I have nothing left to lose. So I don't care if I talk about the ugly things in front of you. It's not for me to hide. It is something to steward. There's nothing that we share more as humanity than scars, no matter how we got them, self-induced or induced by the world or people around us in our lives. That is the thing that we have to steward. Scars, not our successes, not things that are, looked at as, character building qualities, but scars. How are we stewarding our scars to one another, in service to one another, to love one another? And when you stand up in front of a crowd and you show, like, here's this huge scar that I have, and here's how I got it, and here's what Jesus did with it, there's something in that goes, me too.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
too.
And the scar is only a wound that's healed, right? So some people
Absolutely.
may have a partial opening of that wound that's not fully healed. It's more than just sensitive skin.
Right.
It's still open. So it needs
right.
to be totally healed to
absolutely.
be a scar.
People, Nadia Boltz-Weber actually said several years ago, which I love and applaud this statement: speak from your scars, not from your wounds. And when you're bleeding on everybody, and people do this online all the time, or, I'd be bleeding all over those keyboards, but social medias. But speak from those scars, not from your wounds.
That's
there's
awesome.
a special place.
Word
for
picture.
you yes, it is so helpful. And it really, if you have something to say to someone that would be helpful, you're probably going to be speaking from a healed place, a more healed place. If you're in ICU and unstable and the blood, is gushing, you are no help to anybody else. If you picture yourself in ICU, you are no help to anyone. You need help.
Sounds like a parable. I
It-
wonder
right?
where we got that idea from.
Right. I have no idea. I didn't even make that up. But that is really true.
Yeah,
you know, and
I
it's
love
like,
that analogy.
we're all in the hospital all the time.
Yeah.
And there are moments that I'm going to be in the ICU again and again and
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
But there are also moments that I'm like pushing the little cart, down the hall because I'm healed enough to do that. And I'm like, here's a drink. Here's your meds. Here's something to help you. Here's some food. We can help others in that sense when
Yeah.
we're healed enough. But, we're not always pushing the cart around, and we're never the physician.
Right.
So we have to keep that.
So your story, I saw that message you gave, and just knowing you had been with you a few times, I thought, man, I got to get her down to help us with this thing. And I'm just so thankful that you're here.
Absolutely.
Closing thought. Anything you want to put a bow on with your story, to tie this up, and that I'm using a Treyism that they always make fun of me on. But any thoughts for, especially the women that might be listening, as it relates to you, maybe your life
I
on
think
the power of grace.
one thing that really comes to mind, especially during that specific sermon that you're talking about when I preached on this Samaritan,
And we'll put it on those podcast links. People can
Okay.
check it out.
that particular, I mean, Tullian has been my in-house seminarian, my professor for the last almost 10 years, honestly. He always is like, find something that's pressing in. It's not an application of 3 steps to have a good marriage,
Right.
how to live with integrity,
Right.
5 easy steps. Preach the law, preach the gospel. Find that in the text and preach it. And I'm okay. And at that point, the heaviest thing on me was not being invited to my youngest son's wedding because of 20 years before that, a divorce. And just the unforgiveness that still existed between me and ex-in-laws and my ex. My son and I had a good relationship, close relationship. And so for me not to be invited, and I knew for the last several years that would be the case. I was not looking forward to the day that I knew he would get married and I wouldn't be there. Oh. And as a woman, for a woman to not specifically, dads, people get divorced and dads may not have their kids full time. Usually the mom does. All of that was opposite for me. All of it was opposite for me. And being invited to this wedding, not being invited to my son's wedding as a mother and woman, there's a huge stigma attached to that. What's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. What kind of mom have you been? Why wouldn't your son invite you to a wedding? Mm. There's so many questions that go along that and so much instant judgment. And because I preached that didn't change. That wasn't the catalyst, that changed it. God was already doing things. But for me to stand up there and be able to talk about that most painful thing and show how, even if that didn't change and circumstances stayed the same, I went away from that well telling everybody that Jesus has known everything about me. He knew everything about me. And that was the most beautiful part of that even, because at that moment when I preached that, I wasn't going to my son's wedding. But at 4:30 that afternoon, he texted me and asked me to go to his wedding. And it was a catalyst of my husband after that sermon. Tullian goes, I came home from church, and he's like, babe, that was amazing. That sermon was so great. And he's like, I can't take it anymore. I got to talk to Hunter about this. And so he reaches out to my son and says, I really think that you just got to invite your mom. You have to. Oh. And so he did. At 4:30 that afternoon, Hunter invited me to the wedding, which was the next Saturday. And I got on a plane Wednesday and I was there at that wedding. And what a redemption story. What a moment of absolute grace in practice in 1,000 different ways for me. But if that wouldn't have happened, grace was still in practice for me. Because not all the stories end that way. Not everybody gets to go to the wedding, and I wasn't expecting to be able to go to the wedding.
Yeah. Stupid, silly question.
Oh, great.
For the last thing.
Love.
Ready?
Yeah.
Y'all been together how many years? 10?
We met 10 years ago this July.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming up on 10
All
years.
right.
We dated for a year.
I just got to know, first time you walked in and met Granddad,
Oh my gosh.
what was like meeting Billy Graham?
Stop it. Let me tell you. So first of all, Tullian and I went to, we traveled for our honeymoon in early September 2016. And part of our travel was to North Carolina. So on our honeymoon, we were in Black Mountain, Montreat, where his grandparents lived. Gigi still lives there, Tullian's mom. And we were going to go see Daddy Bill. That's what they call him. And his house is on top of a mountain. So there's this literally winding road that goes up this mountain. And I felt, I've known who he was since I was a little girl. I grew up in the buckle of the Bible Belt. So in Texas, Billy Graham.
Yep.
He's basically the Pope of Texas. So if you don't know who he is, are you even Texan?
Hey, come on.
Or Christian? And so we're driving up there, and I felt like I was going to meet Moses. Literally, I felt like this
Top of the mountain.
Yeah, literally, I felt like something is going to happen. Like Jesus may come back right now. Like I felt, and I was praying for it. I was like, God, if it would happen right now, yes,
It'd be perfect.
Yes, and I was so. That's the feel. I can't say any other feeling. And when he came out, he was old. Very, very old by the time I met him, and he was actually in one of those like recliners that's like a wheelchair, but it's also a recliner. And when we got there, they wheeled him out to their front room that has this picture window that overlooks the edge of a mountain. It's just gorgeous. And Gigi went up to one side of him, Tullian went up to the other side, and he had to wear like a little hearing apparatus, and you had to speak into the microphone so that he could hear you. And, he kind of recognized them and was, responsive. And then Tullian said, Daddy Bill, this is my wife, Stacie. And he has this picture of us, like me getting beside him and him looking at me and me looking at him. I don't even know what was happening in that moment, but it was one of the most powerful moments. And I was, right before I moved up to by his head to meet him, I was watching them both tell him hi, and I was holding his feet because he was like propped up like a recliner, and his feet were right here. He was a tall man, so he had some big feet. And so I'm here, I'm holding his feet, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, these feet have stood in front of more people than any other human on the planet to preach.
That's where your mind went. Just,
yes, I'm
oh my
like,
God.
these feet. These right here, God used to stand in front of more humans than ever before to talk about Jesus,
right?
Which is crazy to me. Wow. It was an existential, complete. I don't even know. It was one of the most profound moments in my life to meet him, because he was the first person ever that I remember, Billy Graham, saying, God loves you, like looking straight through the TV. And I just remember sitting there as a little girl going, he does. God loves me. He does. And he was the first person that just kept repeating that. It always stuck with me. And then to meet him was just
that's too
over the top.
Oh, man.
Over the top.
Well, Stacie, you're a blessing to us. I can't explain how excited I am that you're part of our project. We've got some amazing Grace video testimonials that are being filmed. You're going to be a part of it May 31st at the King Center. It's our 6th experience with Matthew West called the Grace Experience. We're going to have, it's going to be a night of grace and worship, messaging about our partners with Amigos in Cristo, the AVET Project, and the Christ is the Answer Rescue Mission. We're going to be there. And we're going to be raising awareness and some money and paying a few bills and all that kind of good stuff. But most importantly, we're hoping one or two people at a minimum walk away knowing Jesus a little bit deeper and or knowing him at all. So we're thrilled you're going to be a part of it. You can check out the Matthew West and get your tickets at the kingcenter.com, kingcenter.com. And you can go to our website at impactministries.org. That's mpactministries.org. If you're watching us right now on YouTube, click the like button, share us, follow us, subscribe to the, all the good stuff. Doesn't cost you a dime. Or if you'd like to support the ministry, you can go to our website and click the give button. We would love for you to help us crush Satan under our feet. So we would really appreciate that. So a joy having you.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome for you to be here. We will catch you next week with Michael and Jeremy, maybe back. The other Jeremy, maybe back in as well. We'll figure it out. Michael's going to be gone for a couple of weeks, it looks like. So until then, everybody, I'm Trey.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Brad.
I'm Stacie.
And we are the Cussin Christians.
Come on.
Come on. I could not imagine walking up into his living room and meeting him. I met him once.
Right now, it was like one of the craziest moments of my life.
I was in Jacksonville staying at the Sawgrass Marriott on a business meeting, and I came back from dinner, and there was this limousine out front, and there was this elderly